On March 5, 2021, 30-year-old Matthew Dunmeyer left a bar in suburban Cleveland and got into a white Smart driven by an unknown woman. He said goodbye to his friends, saying he was spending the weekend with a friend from his past and was never seen again. The next day, he didn't return home, didn't answer calls, and his phone was turned off. From that moment on, Matthew's family's life began to rapidly fall apart. No one knew who the woman was, where they were going, or why Matthew was hiding this meeting. This is a story about false lives, a blind desire for justice, and how one unobvious encounter can set off a chain of events that are impossible to reverse. Matthew Dunmeyer was born on November 26, 1989, in Hudson, Ohio, to Tommy and John Dunmeyer. The town where he grew up was Quincy, a model of American suburban stability. Well-kept houses, good schools, a high level of safety. His childhood was spent in this calm environment. Matthew showed an interest in music from an early age. His parents supported his passion. At the age of 6, he began playing the guitar and later mastered other instruments. As a teenager, he became interested in rock music, attending concerts with friends who had been with him since elementary school. After finishing school, Matthew gave up on the idea of going to college. Instead, he got a job as a salesman at a local store and stayed in his hometown. At the age of 20, he met a girl whose name is not indicated in the case materials. A year later, the couple began living together. Soon, they had a son, Caleb, and 2 years later, a daughter, Adriana. Matthew became a father at a young age, but according to friends, he was an involved parent and family man. He worked, kept in touch with friends, and led an outwardly stable life. Chelsea Perkins was born the same year as Matthew and graduated from the same high school in 2009, although they were not in the same class. After graduating, she joined the U.S. Coast Guard. She worked in Texas for several years, serving as part of a small vessel crew. During this period, she met her future husband, whom she later married and had 2 children with. The family moved to Virginia. After leaving the service, Chelsea began working online. She began creating adult content under the pseudonym Selena Savage. She signed up for OnlyFans and promoted the account through social media. This activity brought her a steady income comparable to her previous salary in the Coast Guard. Chelsea's accounts were opened under her stage name, which allowed her to maintain distance between her public image and her personal life. Chelsea and Matthew's loved ones didn't know that they had ever communicated. Until 2021, they hadn't shown themselves as acquaintances in any way. It all started with a seemingly ordinary contact on a social network, behind which none of their loved ones saw anything significant. No one could have predicted the tragic consequences of this online communication. Friday, March 5, 2021, Mattia Dunmeyer went to a bar after work, a place he regularly visited with colleagues and friends. This time, he also arranged to meet a few acquaintances in advance to spend the evening in the usual conversations. The gathering began at about 5:30 p.m. As was their custom, the meeting was not expected to last long. Everyone planned to return home for dinner. The group discussed plans for the weekend. Someone suggested getting together in nature. Others talked about family matters. When it was Matthew's turn, he said he was busy. He said an old friend of his from Virginia had come to the state. He said they had agreed to meet up and spend some time together. This aroused keen interest among those present. Several people began to ask who exactly this girl was, how he knew her, why he had not invited her to join the company at the bar. Matthew avoided direct answers. He did not give a name, did not go into details, said only that they planned to stay at the Iron B&B outside the city, and the next day to walk in the park. The reaction of her friends was cautiously guarded. Many were surprised that she would go out for the night with a woman no one had ever heard of, especially since he was in a relationship and living with the mother of his children. Some of those present had been friends with him since high school and did not recall any girlfriends from Virginia. Matthew's behavior was perceived as uncharacteristic. Previously, he had not hidden such trips and openly shared personal news. At some point, Matthew received a message on his phone. He read it, stood up from his desk, and said that he was about to be picked up. One of his colleagues, who was his immediate supervisor, called to accompany Matthew to the parking lot. He admitted that he was simply curious, wanted to see that mysterious companion. It was already dark outside. Matthew headed toward a white car parked near the entrance. The shape of the body indicated that it was a Smart. The driver was a woman with dark hair. Due to the lighting and distance, it was impossible to see her face. The manager said goodbye to Matthew and returned to the bar, sharing with the others what he had seen. Matthew's departure left a feeling of incompleteness. The conversations in the company continued, but the mood had changed. Some began to speculate about a possible affair. Others simply wondered why he was hiding everything. None of them had any idea that they were seeing him for the last time. The morning of March 6, 2021, did not arouse any suspicions among Matthew's loved ones. He had said in advance that he planned to return home by evening, and no one saw any reason to worry ahead of time. However, he did not make contact during the day. Calls went unanswered, and his phone was switched off. By 8 p.m., Matthew's partner began calling his friends, trying to find out if anyone knew where he might be. Some of them had been with him at the bar the night before and confirmed that he had left with a woman in a white Smart. None of them knew who she was, where they were going, or had heard of her before. There was no clue as to her identity. These conversations only increased their anxiety. It became apparent that Matthew had deliberately kept the details of the encounter secret from anyone, even those he had been close to for years. By this point, the partner had checked every possible channel of communication, but there was no response. The last message she had received from Matthew had come at 10:49 p.m. the previous day, and there had been no sign of activity since. The phone was still out of range. It had been more than a day since he left home. It was not in his nature to disappear without explanation or warning anyone. Late in the evening of March 6, Matthew's parents went to the Hudson Police Department. They filed a missing persons report for their son. His mother insisted that he could not have left of his own free will. According to her, Matthew did not have a habit of disappearing without warning, much less leaving his children and partner completely unseen. The family stressed that such a thing had never happened. The police, having familiarized themselves with the details, took the statement seriously. Since it was an adult, the established procedures were in effect. But the officers immediately noted that the described circumstance looked alarming. Already in the first hours, they began checking the places where he could be: hospitals, prisons, road accidents, hotels nearby. However, this did not bring results. Without access to Matthew's phone, investigators were limited in their options. No one had information about where he was planning to spend the night. He did not name Airbnb. The identity of the girl remains unknown. The only clue is the testimony that she was driving the white Smart. This was not enough to immediately begin active search operations outside the city. Searches in Kotzen and the surrounding areas yielded no results. He was not at his friends' houses, nor at work, nor among the patients of local medical institutions. No incidents in the area matched his description. Police continued to question relatives and colleagues, trying to stop possible travel routes. At the same time, investigators requested surveillance camera data from the area of the bar where he was last seen. As the night wore on, March 6th, the situation officially moved from temporary absence to the category of disappearance. Given that almost a day had passed since the last contact, and the connection had not been restored, the missing person case received priority. Family and friends were beginning to realize that this might not be a delay or a domestic incident, but something much more serious. On the morning of March 9, 2021, the Vale View Police Department received an urgent call. A group of hikers in Cuyahoga Valley National Park had discovered the body of a man. It was lying on the side of one of the hiking trails, a few meters from the trail, in an area with easy access, but not a direct line of sight from the road. The park is located on the border of two counties between densely populated areas and intersects with several highways. The patrol arrived on the scene within minutes. The area around the body was immediately removed. Upon examination, it was noted that the man was dressed in dark clothing, a leather jacket, a hoodie, fingerless gloves, dark jeans, and boots. Nearby on the ground was a plastic bottle with the Aquafina logo, half filled with water. There were no documents or a phone in the deceased's pockets. The initial examination showed that death had occurred no less than 2 days before the discovery, and no signs of a struggle were found nearby. The body lay flat, with no visible signs of dragging. This gave grounds to believe that the murder had taken place in this very place. An entry wound from a gunshot wound was found on the back of the head. Death was caused by a shot to the head. The bullet passed from top to bottom, which could indicate that the deceased was sitting or standing, and the shooter was nearby. The body was sent to the morgue for a forensic examination. In parallel, a check was started on the databases with reports of missing persons. Officers from the Hudson Department, having learned of the discovery, arrived at the scene to verify the information. The next day, experts confirmed the identity of the deceased. It was Matty Dunmire, who had been missing for 4 days. His identity was established by fingerprints and a tattoo on his hand, described in a statement by relatives. News of his death was passed on to relatives. The official cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. The police reclassified the case from a missing persons search to a murder investigation. After identifying the deceased, investigators focused on a single lead. Matthew's colleagues told them about the white smart car he got into on the evening of March 5th. A witness who accompanied him to the parking lot reported that the driver was a woman with dark hair. He did not remember the license plate number, and the woman's face was indistinguishable due to the darkness. The investigation began with an analysis of surveillance cameras in the area of the bar. The investigation began with an analysis of surveillance cameras in the area of the bar. It was established that the bar's parking lot was not equipped with video surveillance. However, a white Smart was recorded driving toward Hudson at 5:46 p.m., 15 minutes before Matthew arrived at the bar, at a nearby freeway exit. This footage confirmed the direction of the car's travel. The next stop on the route was a petrol station, where at 18:15, the camera recorded the same car. Matthew got out of the car, went inside, and bought a bottle of water, cigarettes, and a drink in aluminum cans. It was this bottle of water that was later found next to the body. This stopped the continuous chronology of movement. Further analysis of the camera footage and road scanners showed that Smart was heading north, towards Cleveland. Using data from road sensors and travel on toll sections of the highway, it was possible to accurately reconstruct the route. The car drove to an Airbnb rental on Ashbury Avenue in East Cleveland. Officers interviewed the owner, who provided a photo of Matthew. He confirmed that the man had indeed stayed there for one night. The staff at the property also recalled that Matthew had arrived with a woman with dark hair. After a formal request to Airbnb, investigators obtained the booking details. The name used at the check-in was Chelsea Perkins. A check confirmed that Chelsea and Matthew had attended the same school, but had not kept in touch for many years. None of Matthew's family or friends had heard of her before. For the first time in years of communication, he did not mention who exactly he was going to spend the weekend with. Having established her identity, the police began gathering information about Chelsea and her current place of residence. Using surveillance camera data, toll road footage, phone geolocations, and Airbnb bookings, investigators reconstructed the timeline of Matthew and Chelsea's meeting. They arrived at a rented home on Ashbury Avenue in Cleveland around 6:30 p.m. on March 5th. The home was rented for one night in Chelsea's name. According to the service staff, the couple arrived in a white smart car. Both entered the building. CCTV footage from a nearby camera confirmed that the car remained parked outside the house throughout the night. There was no activity recorded near the building until the morning. On the morning of March 6th at 8:37 a.m., both of Chelsea and Matthew's phones began moving. Geolocation data showed that they had left Cleveland and were heading toward Cuyahoga Valley National Park. At 9:45 a.m., both devices were simultaneously detected within the coverage area of a cell tower located at the southern entrance to the park. This corresponded to the route of movement previously recorded by the traffic camera system. The point where the body was later found was within walking distance of that area. The car stopped in a parking lot, GPS said, and both devices remained stationary for a period of time. At 10:49 a.m., Matthew sent his partner another text message saying he would be home that evening. That was the last recorded activity on his phone. The signal from the device disappeared after about half an hour. From that moment on, he did not make any more messages or calls. The phone turned off or was switched to airplane mode. Chelsea's phone remained active. On a bottle of water found near the body, experts found two biological traces, Matthew's DNA and Chelsea's DNA. This evidence became the first evidence of Chelsea's physical presence at the murder scene. Because he had purchased the bottle in her presence, and it had later been found on the ground near his body, investigators concluded that Chelsea had been with him at the time of his death and shortly before. Further analysis of the contents under Matthew's fingernails and microscopic examination of the hairs in his clothing also revealed traces that matched Chelsea Perkins' genetic profile. This evidence left no doubt that she was the last person to see him alive. After Matthew's body was discovered, police continued to track Chelsea's vehicle. The toll highway system picked up the white Smart at 1 p.m. on March 6th as it headed north out of Ohio. It was then traced to the Toledo area before crossing the border into Michigan. That evening, a CCTV camera recorded a car entering the parking lot of the Family Inca tattoo salon. According to the studio staff, a woman with dark hair arrived alone, showed an ID in the name of Chelsea Perkins, and completed the service. She stayed in the premises for several hours and got a new tattoo. There were no signs of anxiety or unusual behavior. After the procedure, she paid in cash and left the establishment. Later that day, a photo taken in front of the tattoo salon mirror appeared on Chelsea's personal social media page. The photo showed a fresh tattoo on the skin, and the post was captioned, "What a great weekend." Its location confirmed that the post was made from Michigan. The post did not contain any hints about the events that happened that morning. Since March 7th, Chelsea's car has been tracked on surveillance as it moves toward Virginia. She has returned home to Arlington, continuing to live her life as usual. There were no signs that she was under duress or trying to escape. She then spent several weeks actively using social media, posting casual photos and showing no interest in the ongoing violence. On March 30th, 2021, investigators obtained a search warrant for Chelsea Perkins' home. At that time, more than 3 weeks had passed since Matthew Donmeyer's death. The investigation had sufficient grounds to conduct procedural actions. Her presence with Matthew in the park, biological traces, route of travel, joint booking of accommodation, video recording confirmed by them, and cell phone data. On the day of the search, FBI agents arrived at her residence. Chelsea herself was present, opened the door, and did not resist. When speaking to the task force, she expressed surprise at the visit and refused to comment on any issues without an attorney. During the search of the house, a .9 semi-automatic pistol was found. The gun was registered in Chelsea's name and was later confirmed to be the weapon used to shoot Matthew in the back of the head. Also, seized from the home were communication devices, documents, personal items, clothing, and accessories. Consistent with surveillance footage from the Cleveland area and parkas, based on DNA evidence found on a bottle of water and under the victim's fingernails, investigators had a solid case. Despite the evidence, Chelsea Perkins was not immediately arrested. For several months after Matthew's murder, she continued to live in Virginia, did not change her place of residence, behaved openly, and showed no signs of distress. This caused growing confusion among the family. The lack of response from the authorities was particularly hard on Matthew's mother, Tommy Dunmeyer. Tommy refused to accept that the main suspect in her son's murder remained at large. In her opinion, the law enforcement system was inactive. Letters and appeals to investigators and the prosecutor yielded no results. Neither she nor her husband could be given a date for the arrest, explaining this by the need to comply with the procedure. The situation began to destroy Tommy's mental state. She stopped sleeping, spent nights at the computer, trying to gather information about Chelsea. She looked at her social media profiles, wrote down addresses, looked up travel information. All this happened in parallel with the difficult experience of losing her son. After a few months, her despair turned into an obsession. If the law could not provide justice, she would achieve it herself. In the fall of 2021, Tommy convinced her husband John to back her plan. Together, they ordered 2 forms of courier service online, rented a car, and bought him a pile of packages. The goal was to infiltrate private property under the guise of delivery. Tommy was sure she had pinpointed Chelsea's exact address in Washington, D.C. In fact, she had made a mistake. Chelsea lived in Arlington, Virginia. The couple drove to the house they had chosen in November. Arriving at the place, John stayed in the car, and Tommy, dressed in a courier uniform, approached the door with a box in her hands. A few seconds later, a woman appeared on the threshold. Seeing the courier uniform, she did not suspect anything unusual. At that moment, Tommy pulled a gun from under her jacket and shot the woman twice in the stomach. The victim of the attack fell on the floor of the entrance. Almost immediately, Tommy realized that she had made a mistake. The woman had no connection to the case and was not acquainted with Matthew or Chelsea. The identity of the victim has not been officially disclosed. It is only known that she did not die, but was taken to the hospital in serious condition and survived the operation. Tommy, realizing that she had made an irreparable mistake, tried to hide. However, neighbors, hearing shots, called the police. The first patrols arrived within minutes. Tommy tried to escape on foot, but was spotted near the crime scene. Seeing officers approaching, she turned the gun on herself and shot herself in the head. She was 57 years old at the time of her death. Her husband John was arrested at the scene in a car parked nearby and made no attempt to escape. He was charged with complicity in attempted murder and conspiracy to commit a crime. He later testified that he had acted under pressure from his wife. After the tragedy, the family was completely destroyed. Matthew's 2 young children were left without a father and grandmother. The public outcry around the story led to increased pressure on the investigative authorities. At that point, Chelsea was still at large. Tommy didn't live to see the suspect arrested. Her action was a catastrophic consequence of what the family felt was too much inaction. It was not until December 9, 2021, 9 months after the crime, that Chelsea Perkins was formally arrested and taken to the police station at her place of registration. During the arrest, she behaved calmly, did not offer resistance, but refused to give evidence. She was charged with premeditated murder. The court refused the possibility of release on bail, citing the gravity of the charge, the evidence collected, and the risk of evading the investigation. From that moment on, Chelsea was kept in pretrial detention. Her lawyers filed an appeal to review the preventive measure, but the court upheld the initial decision. The investigation submitted the materials to the court, preparing an indictment that included witness statements, ballistics results, CCTV recordings, message printouts, confirmation of housing reservations, and a full digital chronicle of the accused movements. The case was considered from 2022 to 2024. Chelsea's lawyers insisted on her innocence and stated that there was insufficient evidence. The accused herself denied her guilt and claimed that she had nothing to do with Matthew's death. Her position remained unchanged until the spring of 2025. In May 2025, more than 4 years after Matthew's murder, Chelsea Perkins suddenly changed her position. Until this point, she had denied any involvement in the crime and refused to admit guilt. However, she has now agreed to a plea deal and officially admitted her guilt in the crime. According to the terms of the agreement, she was offered 27 to 31 years in prison. The court took into account the time she had served in pretrial detention and ordered that time to be counted towards her overall sentence. The exact number of years within the sentence was to be determined later. In return, Chelsea provided an explanation of her reasons for her actions. She said the motive for the murder was revenge. In a statement given to the court, she claimed that Matthew had assaulted her during a party in her hometown in 2017. She filed a police report, but the case was not pursued due to lack of evidence. The charges were dismissed, the investigation was closed, and Matthew was never held accountable. Chelsea said that years later, when she accidentally discovered him on social media, she decided to contact Matthew, ostensibly for the sake of communication. But in reality, she said, she had planned the meeting and the murder in advance. She chose a time when she could leave the house under the pretext of going to get a tattoo, arranged a rental, invited Matthew, and carried out her plan. The investigation was unable to confirm her version. Archived documents did contain a reference to a 2017 report of abuse filed in the same county, but the case was closed after 3 weeks due to a lack of grounds for criminal prosecution. There was no direct evidence of Matthew's guilt. Matthew's relatives and friends rejected Chelsea's version. In their opinion, he was not capable of such an act. However, the prosecution did not formally refute the stated version, since there was no way to verify it. The main defendant was already dead. The court noted that the admission of guilt made it possible to avoid a lengthy trial with the participation of a jury. On September 9, 2025, the court issued its final sentence of 25 years in prison without parole until the suspended term expires. Thus, Chelsea Perkins will be in prison until 2050, taking into account the time previously spent in prison. This decision marked the end of a multi-year investigation that left many unresolved moral and legal questions. The motive for the crime was never confirmed by objective data. The only version left was the words of the convicted woman. Society was divided in its assessments. Some considered her act a personal revenge for injustice. Others, a pre-planned murder without proven grounds. An answer that completely satisfies both sides has not appeared. Subscribe to the channel. I also recommend watching other, no less shocking stories. Click now. See you soon.